All right, welcome back to the Own Development Sports Show. It's going to be episode 27, but it's going to be a little bit different than most of our episodes. So today we're going to go through the 2021 NFL Draft Special from Odin. So unlike most draft specials, we're not talking mostly X's and O's. Now we'll mix it in here like we normally like to, but we're going to try to stick to character and off-field potential just as much as the importance of the on-field impact of these players. So as most of you know at this point, following the Odin Sports Show, you know that I'm not as much of an NFL fan as I am college football. However, the best part of college football, the best part of the NFL is watching the players from college grow and become professionals and having a great impact both on and off the field. So we're going to talk about that. Maybe make some bold predictions here a little bit, although I don't think there's going to be too many bold predictions. I think a lot of this draft is kind of set in stone already, but we're going to see some trades and stuff, so we'll see what happens. So how we're going to do this is I have a mock draft up here from 247 Sports, and this one is by Nick Costco, which he basically took a combo of Todd McShay's and Mel Kiper's drafts and did his own. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the list, maybe talk about a little bit about each of the players they have selected for the first round, maybe talk about some later round sleepers or some guys that I really like that I think can have an impact. And that'll be what we do for the Odin Development Draft Special. Now, a recap. The one thing I want to remind everybody that from last year that I said I got more messages about this than anything from last year's kind of draft special, which was only a subtopic of one of the shows. I definitely loved that Justin Herbert balled out this past season. He was my number one quarterback coming out. I absolutely loved his body of work at Oregon, and I loved his potential, and he was outstanding this past year. So really looking forward to his career and what he's got going on in the future. But I received more messages about that and the fact that I wasn't a huge Tua fan, although I do like Tua's attitude. I like his work ethic, but just wasn't a huge fan of his potential, at least at the beginning. And everybody kind of sent me some messages about that, not really liking that take, and turned out that was pretty good. So I think if Herbert was on the Dolphins and was with that crew there down in Miami, I think they would have been really, really special. And Miami's still a good football team, and I expect to see a lot from them, probably to make the playoffs. But just want to remind everybody that Justin Herbert, that was my bold take last year that I got a lot of flack for. So keep that in mind as you guys listen. So without further ado, we'll go through the list here. Keep in mind there's some changes that have already been made from this, and I'll try to update those as I remember them. And then, of course, there's a few days before the draft, so there's going to be some trades that are made, including what I hope to be a trade from the Falcons. Again, as many of you know, I'm a Falcons fan, so when we get to that, I'll be a little bit more X's and O's heavy. Okay, without further ado, number one off the board is going to be Trevor Lawrence. Everybody knows it. Jacksonville's got the pick, and barring any kind of a crazy trade, he's on his way to Jacksonville. I'm really excited for him. I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. His work ethic, his intensity, his leadership, everything is awesome from him that we're able to see. I also caveat is that, we're not in these draft meetings and we're not able to talk to the kids, and I don't know any of these young men. So for all I'm just basing off, what we see from interviews, what we see on the field. So for all I know, I'm completely off the mark with the interviews and what these guys are being, shown to the coaching staffs of these teams. But, we'll do the best that we can. So that said, Trevor Lawrence, without a doubt, he's on the all-character team already. And, of course, he's been in a national championship. He won a national championship as a freshman. Outstanding young man from the looks of it, and really looking forward to his career. And the only thing I will say with his pick to Jacksonville is I am not a huge Urban Meyer fan. Just a lot of question marks around him, especially leaving Florida, leaving Ohio State. Just a lot of question marks, not saying anything for sure bad. And then he had the coaching staff issues there at Ohio State. So not sure that the two of them really match up great, but it's just something to keep an eye on, although there are a lot of weapons in Jacksonville and they have one of the best cap situations. So looking forward to Trevor Lawrence's success in the future. All right, number two, this is one of the most intriguing situations here for me, because if you would have asked me, not looking at any of the draft, predictions, analysis, all that stuff, I would have said without a doubt Justin Fields was going number two to the Jets. Zach Wilson has found himself in there on every single draft selection, every single mock draft. Zach Wilson going to the Jets, and this is interesting for a couple of reasons. There are some things that when you start talking about character and leadership, again, taking out off the X's and O's as much as possible. There's fits, right? There's certain fits in professional teams. You have an attitude fit, you have a culture fit. I just don't know. And New York is nobody fits in New York, right? It's just a tough place to be. It's just with the media and everybody surrounding you, and just the Jets fan base is always kind of hounding you. I just don't know that a kid from BYU is going to be that successful in New York when he doesn't have a whole lot to work with there already. I personally am a fan of, teams that are picking 1st through 10th. They typically need a lot, right? Unless you're San Francisco here, which we're about to get to. Most of these teams are picking that low for a reason. They need a lot of help. And so instead of picking that one kid, I typically would rather trade back and maybe get a few solid players as opposed to one player, right? Those teams are not one player away from winning a Super Bowl. The teams picking, 20 through 30, those teams typically are one or two players away from winning it all. So I typically would be a fan, if I were a general manager, of trading back, getting some extra picks, and maybe building a foundation for a team. But from what everyone's saying, Zach Wilson's the guy to New York. We wish him all the best. I don't know how successful they're going to be. They don't have a whole lot of a surrounding group with them there to help him out. Now they do have another good cap situation with the Jets, but we'll see what happens. But Zach Wilson, I guess, is going number 2. Again, nothing against the kid. Seems like a nice guy. Went to BYU. In my experience, all the guys that I played rugby against BYU were all outstanding men. So he probably is a good kid. All right, number 3. So San Francisco traded up to the 3rd spot, and from what everyone can tell, they're there to pick a quarterback. I think there's a lot of talk between Justin Fields and Mac Jones there. Kyle Shanahan, who I think is the best play caller in football outside of the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl. Other than that, he's unbelievable. He's my favorite play caller to watch. And they look like they're taking quarterback. So the question really is Justin Fields, Mac Jones, or potentially, I guess, Trey Lance. And I would take Justin Fields just based off the pure athleticism, the size, the speed, the strength, the arm strength. He seems like the best quarterback to me. Now, this is where you start getting into I'm not in the room when these kids have their conversations. I don't know exactly what the coaching staff is looking for, either from a character perspective, leadership perspective, or maybe even a scheme perspective. But from what I would guess, I think Justin Fields would fit Kyle Shanahan's scheme. And I think his higher level of athleticism compared to a Mac Jones would make him the better quarterback. Now, it did come out that he is potentially battling epilepsy and has some issues with that going on, but he hasn't had any issues from what we can tell throughout his career so far. So why it would be a problem now, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say that. But if that's the case, that almost is a positive to me, because now you have a kid here who's fighting against something, and I'm a sucker for, facing adversity and overcoming it. So I like Justin Fields with number 3. I think he's a really good fit for that scheme. I think he would bring that offense to a whole new level. Just think all the things that Kyle Shanahan has done with guys like Matt Ryan and Jimmy Garoppolo, who are not the most athletic quarterbacks in the world, and you throw in a kid who could run as fast as everybody else on the team. I think that would be a pretty outstanding fit. So we'll see what they go with. I like the idea of Justin Fields there, and that's what this mock draft has. Okay, now number 4. So Atlanta Falcons, that would be my preferred team here. This draft has Kyle Pitts from Florida, tight end from Florida, going to Atlanta. I don't have any issue with that. I think Kyle Pitts is a once in a 5-year span player. He's that good. He can absolutely change the dynamic of your offense. I think he's outstanding. So if the Falcons do get him, there's nothing I can be upset about that. I do think they go a different way or I hope that they go a different way. I have no idea what they're going to do. There's a bunch of different things the Falcons are being kind of mocked for, either quarterback, trading back, taking Kyle Pitts, whatever. But as far as the Kyle Pitts pick goes, he seems like another outstanding young man. He seems like a really hard worker. Again, on the field, he's a tremendous and versatile tight end. He can do a lot of things, and he can block too. That's something that I think a lot of tight ends kind of get overlooked for, is their blocking ability. All you got to do is watch Rob Gronkowski play, and that kid, he's older than me, but that guy can block as good as any offensive lineman in the league, and it shows every single game, on top of the fact that he's tremendous ball skills. So Kyle Pitts is an outstanding young man. He's an outstanding player. I think he completely changes the dynamic of an offense, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I will say this, from a fan standpoint, what I would like to see from the Falcons, since they have determined that they're going to stick with Matt Ryan, who I love Matt Ryan. I think he's great. He's an outstanding person. The character is there. The leadership is there. He's just not a top 10 quarterback to me, at least not anymore. They're paying him a lot of money for him not to be that, but it looks like they're sticking with him. Then I would probably trade back. And I think that they need a tailback to really turn that offense around, because they have Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, probably the best duo as far as wide receivers go in the league, as long as they're healthy. they were kind of missing a tailback last year. I love Todd Gurley, and he did everything he could, and he played extremely well, and he scored a lot of touchdowns, but his dynamic ability is just not there anymore. He's just got knee problems and stuff. So I would really like to see Atlanta trade back, get some extra picks, and pick up Najee Harris or Travis Etienne later in the first round, maybe early second, depending on when they can get them, and then maybe build some defensive depth with those extra picks they could get for that fourth overall pick, because somebody is going to want a quarterback with that pick. So that's what I would like to see them do, but we'll see. If they get Kyle Pitts, I can't be upset with that as long as they bolster the defense with the rest of their picks. All right, number 5, we've got Cincinnati, and this draft has them taking Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon. So this is the first of the group of young men who opted to sit out the season. Now, I'm very torn on this. I'm very torn on the whole sitting out thing, and this is not – just specific to COVID, but with the sitting out the bowl games, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Although I do understand it. I get that these young men, they have a lot on the line, especially if they're kind of locks for high first round picks. We're talking millions of dollars, but a lot of them have insurance policies. So if they got hurt, they'd be able to get paid that way. But I get it. Like, I understand, you've played for so long for football and you want it to all work out in the end financially. But there's just something about sitting out a bowl game, or in this case, sitting out a season and kind of letting your team down, that doesn't sit well for me. So I'll just say that I'm nothing against any of these kids. And of course, with COVID, if there's a genuine COVID concern and, maybe they have a family member that lives with them or is home that they didn't want to get sick or something, I'm totally all for it. I got it, especially with the uncertainty leading into the football season. So I definitely understand that, which is why I'm not going to hammer any of these guys too hard. But, just in the future, I'd really like that trend to kind of go away. But again, I understand it. So going Sewell, I think he is the best tackle in the draft. And without a doubt, Cincinnati needs an offensive tackle or 2 or 5, really, because their offensive line was dreadful last year. It's the reason Joe Burrow, was constantly under pressure, constantly hit, and eventually he tore his ACL. You just knew it was going to happen at sack, because Joe Burrow was outstanding. His toughness, his grit, his leadership. You want to talk about all-character team, that guy is on, the watch list from here on out. So really want to see them get an offensive line to help surround Joe Burrow with some protection. That would be great to see. So Sewell looks like the pick there. The next guy is Slater, probably from Northwestern, which we'll get here in a little bit. But I like both of them a lot. Wouldn't be surprised if either one of them goes pretty high. All right, number 6, we've got Miami and Jamar Chase. Similar situation, sat out last year with the uncertainty for COVID. This is an interesting selection. So Miami taking a wide receiver is a no-brainer to me, because they were just struggling with that. I think that was the one thing on their offense that was really missing. And we can talk quarterback a lot. Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick played out of his mind. I think he's going to help out Washington a lot this next season. But, Tua is their guy. He was a first-round pick. He was a top 5 guy. So that's what they're going with. And, he won a national championship, so he's got the potential to succeed, right? So seeing that wide receiver pick there is probably the right choice. The question here is, how do you pass up Devontae Smith, who was, out of this world last season, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, but Jamar Chase didn't play. I do think Jamar Chase is a better overall wide receiver. I think they're a little bit different as far as, what kind of scheme, what kind of role they play in an offense, but Jamar Chase kind of has it all. And Devontae Smith has most of it too, and he's going to be, selected pretty high as well. But I don't mind it. I think it's a good pick for Miami here, number 6 with Jamar Chase. All right, now this draft has New England selecting Mac Jones at number 7, which means they traded up to, I think, Detroit's pick at number 7 to get Mac Jones. I think this is a similar what's going to happen. Probably this isn't done yet, but they have them trading up to get Mac Jones here. I definitely see New England moving up at some point to get a quarterback. I like Cam Newton. We've talked about him on the show before. I think his off-field, his leadership has tremendously blown my expectations out of the water from what I, kind of saw him at in college to where he kind of grew into the NFL. But, last year he struggled a lot, especially throwing the football. I think he is, I think he can be used really well as a leader and a mentor to a young quarterback, or even as a, change of pace kind of guy. You build an offense around him and you have that option out there for him. I think that's something that, New England would benefit from. So let's say they take a quarterback, let him, learn under Cam Newton for a year, or even potentially have a second offense kind of built around him. They have Mac Jones here. No problem with that. I haven't seen Trey Lance play, so there's nothing I can really say scheme-wise, X's and O's wise. I don't know how good he really can be. But, maybe that's the guy they end up getting. Or if Justin Fields fell down to 7, maybe that's the one they pick. But New England trading up to get a quarterback, nothing wrong with that. And then Mac Jones, there's a lot going on around Mac Jones saying, he was surrounded by good receivers, and he's in a great system, and he played for Alabama, and that's why he's successful. And certainly you can say that. I kind of felt the same way about Joe Burrow coming out a couple of years ago with all the good receivers he had. And, I really was proved wrong with that because he played outstanding on a not so great offense with Cincinnati. But just the fact that, Mac Jones won a national championship. So you can't really fault the kid for that. You can't hold him down too far for that. Certainly you can look to guys in the past who won national championships and didn't produce in the NFL. And I'm not saying that he's going to be great because of that, but you can't say the kid is awful like some of the people are saying out there. So got no problem with Mac Jones. Definitely like the kid's attitude. All right, number 8, and we'll probably go a little bit faster on some of these here, but we've got Raeshawn Slater going to Carolina. Again, I like Slater a lot. He's an absolute bruiser at offensive lineman. Going to Carolina seems like a decent fit. Now, Carolina's got to figure themselves out a little bit more. They're a team, I think, that probably could benefit from trading back some, and if those quarterbacks are available, then maybe they can collect some more picks. But I like Slater a lot at Northwestern. Number 9, we got the Broncos picking Trey Lance at quarterback. I think the Broncos are one of the most intriguing teams just because you don't know really what they're thinking with regard to, is Drew Lock their guy? What are they looking for out of this draft? If Drew Lock is their guy, they're another team that potentially could trade back and get some more picks. So we'll see how it goes. And Trey Lance, wish him the best of luck. I've got no reason to think he's not going to be successful. It does concern me that he played in a lower division and he didn't have a whole lot of games under his belt, but from all these guys are professional evaluators. And if they say that he's, a top 10 talent, then I'm going to trust he's a top 10 talent out there. Okay. Number 10, I like this pick a lot. And I like this young man a lot. So Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, best quarterback in the draft, in my opinion. He might be 1A and 1B with JC Horn. I think they're both outstanding. I expect them both to be, lower double digits. So 10 to 15, somewhere in that range. But, I like him a lot. He went up against the best wide receivers constantly every week, as did JC Horn. And then at practice, and I think that's something that goes overlooked, right? Surtain is practicing against the best wide receivers every single week. He practiced against Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle. Like every week he's going against these guys, and he did pretty well. I think Kyle Pitts got the best of him a couple times in the SEC championship game, but Kyle Pitts got the best of everybody. So I think that's an outlier, and he's outstanding character and young man from what we can tell. So looking forward to that. All right, we've got the Giants picking Devontae Smith at number 11. Again, Devontae Smith is outstanding, Heisman Trophy winner last year, and you want to talk about all-character team. This is probably the captain of the all-character team from last college football season. This young man, he is so outstanding, and every time you listen to an interview, this kid gave credit to everybody but himself. He gave credit to his quarterback, who we've already talked about, his fellow wide receivers, Jalen Waddle being one of those who will probably be drafted here in the next couple of picks. In fact, he's next on this list. Gave credit to his offensive line, who they will have some, top first-round, second-round guys. Just outstanding young man. Every time he opens his mouth, it's something that's worth listening to. And if you're a young kid out there, like looking for someone to look up to, Devontae Smith, go look up his interviews, go look up his stuff on YouTube. On top of his game, is obviously outstanding because he's a Heisman Trophy winner. That's a fantastic young man that I'm looking forward to following his career. All right, number 12, we have Jalen Waddle, as we just talked about, going to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles are a very interesting team. I think they probably need a lot of help too, but now when you're in these mid-teen kind of mid-range picks, there's not a whole lot that you're going to get extra pick-wise unless there is a quarterback available still, which I don't think there will be. But I think going wide receiver for the Eagles, there's nothing wrong with that. They definitely need one. Jalen Waddle is one of the best athletes in college football last year. If he didn't get hurt, we would have been talking about him or Devontae Smith winning the Heisman. And then I will say this for Waddle, his toughness in the college football playoff coming out there following a broken ankle was unbelievable. He didn't have to do that. He's potentially risking getting hurt more, lowering his draft stock, but he went out there and fought for his team, and that's something that really means a lot to me. So I'm a big fan of Waddle's. All right, number 13, we have Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. I'll be honest, haven't watched him a whole lot. I think he's got some pretty high grades. The Chargers could definitely use some offensive line to help Justin Herbert out. They've got a lot of really good players on the Chargers. I don't know what's been their problem. They've lost a lot of close games the last 3 years, but they got Herbert and a heck of a pass rush. And if Derwin James can be healthy, which we really have never seen him play a whole season, I think he's one of the best players in football, especially on the defensive side, and we just haven't gotten a chance to see him play. So looking forward to hopefully a healthy season for them, and wish them the best of luck. All right, another offensive tackle from USC. We've got Elijah Vera Tucker from USC, who I did watch a few times. Seems pretty good. Seems pretty big and athletic, and he's going to Minnesota in this pick. If you watched our last sit-down interview with my friend Jacoby Getty, he said offensive line. That's what he wants for the Vikings, as he's a Vikings fan. So I think that's a good pick for them. And you really can never go wrong with an offensive lineman, especially outside the top 10. You know you're at least going to get some production out of them, even if you have to move them into guard or something. You're going to get some production out of them. Same with linebackers. You're always going to get some production out of linebackers, so they're always a fairly safe pick. All right, looks like 15 he has Detroit, so that must be from the trade back from New England. Micah Parsons, another one who sat out the season, but his ceiling is tremendous. I mean, this pass rush from Penn State was outstanding. He was one of the best defensive players in the country just as a sophomore 2 seasons ago. Would have loved to have seen him last year, but I think he's got a lot of potential there. Okay, number 16, Arizona. We got J.C. Horn. Mentioned him already, along with Patrick Surtain. I think are by hands down top 2 corners. I know that Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech is out there too. I just don't know if the level of competition that he played week in and week out matches up to the other 2, but I think he's got the skill set to be up there as well. But J.C. Horn, this kid went up against the best every single week on a team that wasn't nearly as good as, say, Surtain had in Alabama, and he still held his own every single week. So really looking forward to seeing his career out there. All right, now we've got, let's see. I'm going to skip around a little bit here, and then let's see. Okay, Chicago Bears, we got at the 20th pick taken Farley from Virginia Tech. I like his skill set a lot. Again, not the body of work that Surtain or Horn have, but he's got the ability to be pretty successful. I skipped one. Washington football team. So they've got Jamal Davis from Kentucky, who played pretty well. I mean, he's definitely a good linebacker going to Washington at 19. But what I will say for Washington is, with Fitzpatrick coming in, who I think is a good leader. He's a guy who the teams kind of rally around and follow. I'm really looking forward to Washington this season. They've got a lot of good players, especially in their front 7 and their offensive line. They're both really good. They're really strong. They're really disciplined. I think they got a lot of potential. They made the playoffs last year, obviously, at 7-9, not ideal way to make it into the playoffs, but Chase Young was phenomenal. So coming off the edge there, I'm really looking forward to seeing Washington play this year. And with a down NFC East again, who knows, what the Washington football team there could do. We've got Jalen Phillips coming out of Miami to Indianapolis. I don't know if that's their immediate need at pass rush, but you can never really go wrong with an extra pass rusher. And I think Jalen Phillips is really, really good. I think he's kind of underrated a little bit. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's got the get off. I really like him a lot, and he played really well at Miami last year. I think he would be a higher draft pick if Greg Rousseau had played last season, which we'll get to later on probably. But Greg Rousseau, another defensive end who sat out last year for Miami, if he had played, now you're not focused on Jalen Phillips as much from the offensive line perspective. And I think his stats would have been better and he might have gotten more attention. So really like Jalen Phillips. I'm looking forward to seeing him succeed. And Indianapolis is a great place to go for a pass rusher, any kind of offensive defensive line. Their hopes rely on Carson Wentz. If he can step up and kind of find that potential MVP form he once had, then I think Indianapolis is going to be scary good. All right, got Elijah Moore going 22 to Tennessee, wide receiver at Ole Miss. He was extremely explosive. Good fit for Tennessee, probably. I got no issues with that. We've got Greg Newsome, cornerback from Northwestern, going to the Jets with their first pick. I think that's probably the Jamal Adams trade is where they got that from. This young man played corner very well for Northwestern that had a very good defense last year. So, that's probably a good pick. All right. We got Najee Harris coming off the board, 24 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I mentioned Najee Harris a little bit earlier. In a perfect world, I'd like to see the Falcons trade down, get some extra picks, and get Najee Harris as their future star tailback. Once again, and I have nothing against or nothing in favor of Alabama necessarily. I love Nick Saban and I love their program, but I've already mentioned a bunch of Alabama players being on like the all-character team. Najee Harris is another one of those that's in contention for the all-character team co-captain, because this young man has done everything right. He has played to the highest ability on the brightest stages and has succeeded everywhere and every step of the way. I really love his game. I think he's extremely versatile. He really fits the out of the backfield mold, but he's great between the tackles. His vision is outstanding. His agility is outstanding. I think this is the steal of the draft. I mean, I don't see much of a drop-off between Saquon Barkley and him, and we were talking Saquon as a potential first overall pick, and he ended up being the second overall pick. So really love Najee Harris. Whoever gets this young man is getting a steal of a character standpoint, a leadership standpoint, and on the field standpoint. So really love Najee Harris. Looking forward to a good, successful season from him. All right, we got Jacksonville's second pick from the, I believe, Jalen Ramsey trade, getting Kadarius Toney out of Florida. So if they end up getting Trevor Lawrence, Kadarius Toney, or any kind of an offensive weapon, that's just bolstering a pretty good offense they already got there with DJ Chark and not a horrible offensive line. They've got a pretty good one. They could probably bolster that later on in the draft, but looking forward to that. 26, we got Cleveland Browns with Quiddy Pay, defensive end. He's got a really cool story. If you haven't looked it up, they did a E60 or one of the Sports Center specials story about him and his family. Pretty awesome story to watch. I don't know. I think that might change. That pick might change because Cleveland just recently signed Jadeveon Clowney. So maybe they go somewhere different. I would really like to see Cleveland get a linebacker, just someone to kind of solidify the middle of that defense. I think they're really a linebacker away from that defense being really, really good. They've got pretty good secondary. They got a good pass rush. I think a good, like, solid leader and pure tackler linebacker would be really good for Cleveland there. All right, 27, we got Baltimore with Terrace Marshall from LSU. Again, outstanding group of wide receivers there for the last couple of years, along with him and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I think Marshall is a great pick. Baltimore desperately needs a number one receiver. I think that will completely enhance Lamar Jackson's game, and Baltimore will be scary on offense. Now, we'll get to them here again in a little bit. They did just trade away their right tackle, Orlando Brown, to the Chiefs, but that will get them another first-round pick, but now a hole on an offensive line, which they desperately need that offensive line to be good because of their scheme. But I'm sure they know what they're doing, and they kind of avoid paying Orlando Brown a lot of money doing that. Excuse me. So Terrace Marshall, 27, seems like a good player, hard worker, will be a good fit in Baltimore. All right, Rashod Bateman, New Orleans. So this is an interesting one. Again, this is more on the character kind of off-field side. So if you follow Rashod Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota, outstanding player. I mean, he's got a lot of potential. I really like his game a lot. But before the season, he was one of those that kind of opted out. Then he opted back in. There's a lot of weirdness around that. That just kind of doesn't sit well with me. But again, I'm sure he's got his reasons, and I'm not questioning any of them, especially if they're COVID related. But it would just be something I would talk about in the meetings before I drafted him. But him going to New Orleans, I think, is an interesting pick. New Orleans, I think, is one of those teams that you could see trade up to try to get a quarterback with Drew Brees retiring. But, Jameis Winston's not a bad quarterback. A lot of people rag on him, and obviously he threw a ton of interceptions in Tampa Bay. But I really think, as much of a Drew Brees fan as I am, I think that Jameis Winston probably was the best person to be their quarterback last year. And I think they would have competed a little bit more if he was. But we'll see what they got going on moving forward. All right, Green Bay has Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle from Oklahoma State, in the next pick. All that I care about with Green Bay's picks is if Aaron Rodgers is happy, because that poor guy who, like him or hate him, he is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. He has gotten such little help between free agency and drafts from the Green Bay Packers, and he still continues to win every single year. So part of me just wants him to get whoever the best skill player is on offense and just go to Green Bay. The other interesting thing with the Green Bay is if Aaron Rodgers is expected to stick around for a little bit, they've got Jordan Love sitting there, who was a first-round pick last year. So, potentially using that as a trade to maybe move up or get another pick and maybe get another skill player. So I'd be interested to see if that happens with them. All right, number 30, we got the Buffalo Bills picking Xavier Collins out of Tulsa. And if you haven't watched him, this kid is all over the field. He's got a motor that goes 100 miles an hour. I really like him. I think first round might be a bit of a stretch, but he does give me a lot of that Khalil Mack kind of reminiscent kind of aura around him. Just a high motor, great off the edge, great tackler. Just a lot of good things about him. He's actually really good in coverage too. Seen him drop back a few times and play pretty well. So I really like the kid. I don't know if the first round is where he needs to be. Buffalo, if he's still around or if they move up to get him, Najee Harris to Buffalo would be game changer. I think if they got a dynamic tailback like that, I know Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are there, but I think Najee Harris kind of combines the two of them, and they could maybe do some work with that. But we'll see. I think Buffalo could really utilize another skill weapon on the edge to complement Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen there. So really like Buffalo a lot. All right, 31, Kansas City had Landon Dickerson, center from Alabama, who that was another one, tore his ACL in the national semifinal, I believe, still went on to win a national championship. That kid has a great heart. He's got a great attitude. He's humorous. He's really fun to watch. He's really fun to listen to his interviews. And I'm a sucker for a good, big, strong, physical center. So I like Landon Dickerson a lot. Now, this this pick belongs to the Ravens now, so potentially they're going to get offensive lineman or offensive tackle Dickerson. Maybe I don't think they need a center, but another offensive lineman potentially could be in that spot for Baltimore now that they own the pick. And then 32, we got Tampa Bay, reigning Super Bowl champs. They've got Jalen Mayfield, offensive tackle, Michigan. That maybe potentially could be the pick for Baltimore. Who knows? I don't know Jalen Mayfield very well, but anybody that goes on Tampa Bay is going to learn a ton because Tom Brady's there. And if we talked about in the show before, his leadership just drips to everybody and everything that he touches. So whoever ends up getting picked by Tampa Bay, they probably will learn a ton this season. All right. So that rounds out the first round. And then I just want to go over a couple of guys who weren't listed in the first round who either may get in that first round conversation or are just part of that all character team that I keep bringing up. But Travis Etienne is one of those. I think he could find his way into the first round as one of those tailbacks who could be a game changer for an offensive scheme. And also, he's a kid who I think he set a ton of records at Clemson. He was always getting what seemed to be 150, 200-yard games, multiple touchdowns, seemed pretty good out of the backfield. I think he struggled a little bit in pass pro, so maybe that's an area where he can work on. But I think he's a steal in the second round. And this is a kid who set these records and played extremely well, won a national championship, competed for a couple more, and you never heard anything bad about this kid. And he always kind of put his head down and got to work. So big fan of that. Looking forward to seeing him go out there. Let's see, kind of going through the list of Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State. Obviously, he's got a football family background there, but there's a couple kids in this draft who can just play ball, right? I mean, you can watch combine stats and you can look at 40 times and 3-cone times and all these things and their bench presses and all this stuff. But at some point, you got to turn on the tape and watch kids play football. And Asante Samuel is one of those to me. And he just seems like he knows how to play football. Another one that's like that is Richard LeCount from Georgia. Just a kid that he just plays football well. He might not blow you out of the water with his stats or, with his measurables, but sometimes you just look at a guy and he knows how to play football. And Asante Samuel Jr., Richard LeCount, those are two that kind of fit that mold to me. All right, let's keep going. Christian Barmore from Alabama, defensive tackle, possibly nose guard. I think it would be a great fit in a lot of defensive fronts in the NFL. He's got a good motor, strong, kind of low center of gravity, great player. This definitely seems like a great kid. Want to see him succeed. And let's see who else we got in here. Rondale Moore, wide receiver, Purdue. He's only, I think, 5'7", maybe 5'8", depending on who's measuring that day. But this kid is electric every time he touches the football. And he's got a humongous heart. He was at the center of the Tyler Trent story. So if you're not familiar with that, please look it up or perhaps read the book, The Upset from Tyler Trent. If you're not familiar with it, it's heart-wrenching, great story. I have a personal connection to it that makes me love it even more. But Rondale Moore from Purdue, great kid, great athlete. Second round pick here to the Bears on this mock draft, that would be an absolute steal. So Rondale Moore. All right, Greg Rousseau is another one that we talked about here, kind of late second rounder. I don't know what happened to him. I know he was kind of projected to be kind of early to mid first round early on. Again, he sat out last season. Combining him with Jalen Phillips and that defensive front for Miami would have been outstanding to see. I think it would help both of their draft stocks go up. But I think if you get him in the second round, he is going to be a steal. So we'll see how that goes. We got Eric Stokes going to the Titans here at 53. Eric Stokes, another Georgia guy, kind of came out of nowhere, 2 or 3 star prospects, one of the fastest 40 times ever ran, which again, I'm not a huge 40 time guy, but it does mean something, especially when we're talking cornerbacks and that, recover speed. But Eric Stokes, a really hard worker, great young man. Really looking forward to seeing him succeed. And let's see if there's anybody else on the list that we wanted to cover. All right, I think that's about it, at least from the ones that we know. So just want to give a shout out to some of those guys, some of these young men out here who, will get their names called in the next week or so with the NFL draft starting on Thursday. And, you always talk about character and leadership when it comes to professional athletes, and it does only get you so far, right? If character and leadership and toughness won championships, then the service academies win college football national championship every year. And, the meanest, toughest teams in football would win every year. And they don't, because there is a level of skill. There's a level of X's and O's, the play calling and scheming and all that stuff that goes into football. It's one of the coolest parts about the game to me is there's so much that goes into it. But to me, if you don't have that base level of character and leadership, then you just can't succeed as a team. So all these young men we talked about, looking forward to them succeeding out there, looking forward to them doing their thing, both on and off the field. We talk a lot about charities and organizations here. So for all these guys, if you happen to see this, then, get your foundation started sooner rather than later. It goes a long way for the community. It goes a long way for the team. And any kind of good publicity like that helps. I mean, it shouldn't be the goal, right? You shouldn't do anything because it looks good or, because you get your name out there. But I guarantee you it'll be the most rewarding thing you do with your fame and with your newfound success. And it'll help you out in the long run in a lot of ways. So good luck to all the young men out there. And if you guys have any gripes, any issues with any of the selection analysis that I gave you, please feel free to send it our way. This obviously is not what we do for a living, but we certainly love the game of football here at Odin Development, and we love the character and leadership traits that it builds because it's such a good tool for young men to learn and grow through. So with that being said, wish all your teams luck this week in the draft and wish everybody a happy and healthy May as we start that next week. And as we start reaching the summer, enjoy it with restrictions being lifted a lot of places. Go have fun with your families. Go enjoy some time outdoors and, go for a walk, go do some exercising. It's always good. And it's always good to be out there with your family. So with that, thanks for stopping by as always and have a great day.